Hello guys, welcome back to another video. This is the Football Connect. I'm your host Sam and we are back again with another one. Like I told you, we are gonna be reacting to the Manchester City versus Arsenal game. There are a lot of things that has been talked about and I'm gonna go in depth in terms of what exactly some of the things that I thought of, with some few reactions, hearing what I'm thinking over the games and what I actually expected from the game. So we're gonna be looking at the reaction of the ESPN guys when they were talking about the loss that Man City suffered in the hands of Arsenal, and we're gonna talk about what we thought of it and what we're expecting from them. So do me a favor before we go anywhere from, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, because it's crazy. There are so many people who are watching, but so little of you that are subscribed. So do me a favor, click the like button and subscribe to the Connect. Let's get this community growing, and I'm excited. Let's go.
Hello, it's ESPN FC. Welcome to the show. I'm Dan Thomas. Ali Moreno is here. Shaka Hislop. International Week, no tie for Shaka. That's the way he rolls. Like it or lump it.
He's given up.
Let's talk about what happened yesterday, shall we? I'm not sure if you noticed, but Arsenal beat Manchester City by 1-0, meaning they are now level on points with Spurs at the top of the table. Manchester City in third, 2 points adrift of the North London sides. Here's what Pep Guardiola had to say about the defeat. No team has ever won 4 in a row. Of course, talking about championships, defeats can happen, but we're in October. Sometimes it's good going behind. It's not the first time going behind for the contenders. Last season, we were much behind, but the season is long. It has happened. For more on this, let's welcome in Julien Laurent is with us, as is Manchester City TV's Nadim Anua. Nadim, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Doesn't matter if you lose against Arsenal, be all right in the end.
You would think so. I think obviously it felt like it was a big game yesterday, but lo and behold, like Arsenal win it, and credit to them for doing so. Takes the monkey off their back, because it has been a very long time since they've beaten City in the league, but they're still in second. You know, that's how undefinitive it is. Like, it's 8 games in. We've got 30 more games to go. I think for me, Arsenal still title challengers, City as well. Spurs maybe, Liverpool maybe, but I think it's just good from Arsenal's perspective that they've shown that they can do that. It has been so long since they have. And to be honest, for me, it felt like it was going to be a draw. The game itself, it wasn't the most exciting game you've ever seen. Obviously, defensively, it was solid, it was tactical and so on. But, you know, you have that bit of luck, you have that belief, but then Guardiola knows himself. He's got the likes of Kevin De Bruyne to come back in. John Stones is now back in the mix. Rodri to come back after a couple of weeks as well. So they know that they can get better. But the fact is they're still in contention. And given the fact they were 8 points behind last season and ended up winning the league, why would he panic over 2?
Did he get it wrong, Nadim? Obviously, no Dukel, no Jack Grealish in the starting 11. Went with Foden instead, along with Alvarez and Haaland. Didn't work at all.
Yeah, I think that is a good question, and I think it's one that's arisen because of the fact that, you know, they did end up losing. But when you look at the game from, say, both perspectives, City obviously had their chances in the first half, and Arsenal had 2 shots on target, and they were both from Martinelli. The first one was the left foot shot, which Ederson saved comfortably, and the second one was the one which Ederson was probably going to save before the deflection. So yeah, maybe tactically it wasn't great, wasn't really the type of thing which allows them to be really expansive, but I don't think Arsenal were ever going to let City do that, and the same goes the other way as well. For all the attacking talents that were on the field, you know, both goalkeepers weren't really worked that much in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, I think you could argue that he did get it wrong, but then ultimately, you know, with the last minutes of the game to go, he's probably thinking a draw away at Arsenal, who are going to be contenders, is fine. So yeah, I guess the result means that he didn't get it right, but ultimately, what more can you do when a deflected shot makes the difference?
Jules, I'm not one to go on about this, but I was the only one who predicted an Arsenal victory in this tie. And the reason I did it...
In the world.
Not to be a gab.
In the world.
Not to be, yeah, anyway, in the whole world. Not to be contrarian, is that you see, haven't looked like themselves over recent weeks, and they showed that again yesterday, didn't they?
Yeah, I think the Rodri miss, of course, is big, not just defensively, but in the fluidity that they have with the ball in everything they do, because he's maybe City's most important player this season so far. So without him, you lose at Newcastle in the League Cup, even with a very much B-C team. You lose, of course, at Wolves in a game where you didn't play well and you maybe didn't create enough. And then you lose again at Arsenal in a game that could have easily been a draw. Nadim is right. But where Pep Guardiola tried to replace Rodri with Bernardo Silva in front of that back four, which, with all the options that he had, maybe John Stones was not just fit enough or didn't have enough game time to start a game like this. But between Rico Lewis and Kovacic, Mateus Nunes, Calvin Phillips, of course, who's the one technically supposed to replace Rodri or be second to Rodri. To have Bernardo in that position was very interesting. I thought, and at the stage, and really you could see what City were trying to do. It was just a very, very tactical game that I found fascinating, really. But I can understand why people didn't.
No,
it's
Jules,
true.
don't be one of
really
them.
Really good in the
Don't be
stadium,
one
I
of
promise
them,
you.
Jules. You can't want to watch what we saw between the two biggest teams in England play out that game and go, oh, that's fascinating.
It's about finding solutions to problems that the opposition gives you.
I want to see
face,
goals,
right?
I want to see shots, I want to see drama.
You had them at Brighton Liverpool because they made mistakes defensively. There was just no mistakes defensively in the City Arsenal game because they're better team defensively and overall structurally than Brighton Liverpool, for example.
You don't like a fascinating
One thing that I need to correct first from Nedem's speech, the way he's speaking, he's talking about Arsenal being second. Because, of course, they're second because Tottenham Hotspur are first, which is also the difference, of course. But guess what? They're on the same point. So it doesn't really matter for you to at least try to tell us that they're second because we already know. You can feel the the bitterness of being a City supporter there when he's speaking Nedem, of course, because he loves his team. But let's talk about what he was talking about. First, let's talk about what Pep Guardiola said. He talked about how this is a marathon, not a sprint, and it doesn't matter how you start. It's all about how you finish and how Man City are able to turn it up. Talking about how he set up the team and how the things went in, we can actually explain. And he's talking about no another team has ever done it before, winning 4 in a row, which I also feel like it's just an excuse from Pep Guardiola so that the pressure doesn't pile up on his team, doesn't pile up on this. Or maybe he wants to use it as a way to motivate his team, to tell them that we can be the history makers, the actual team that actually does the four piece, which has never been done. So you can understand that there are those expressions, the way he's speaking is trying to divert, trying to push elsewhere, but we understand from every manager does it. The second thing that I'm going to talk about with what Nedem was talking about, it's a goal. Doesn't matter it deflected, it doesn't matter it's an own goal. Whether it went the way it goes in, it is a goal because it went at the back of the net. So I don't really buy it to talk about, okay, it was a deflected ball. That's a way of just creating a way to run away from what happened. Man City won because Man City lost because a goal was scored by Arsenal and it was a goal. So that's what I'm saying, that there's a lot of bitterness the way he's talking about it. Did Pep Guardiola get it wrong? Taking out the Doku, starting with Foden and not even putting a DM, by the way, just hoping that Bernardo Silva can be that makeshift player who can does what he does, which of course we can never write out Bernardo Silva. Yes, played as a left back. The guy is literally played as a left back, so he can play any other part he wants to play in. So we understand that maybe if that question is being asked, did he get it wrong? Did he not set the team properly? All of the things can actually make sense. 2 + 2 = 4, if you get what I mean. But they had somebody who they can put in the game in Calvin Phillips. Of course, we say he's not the level of Rodri. It has to understand that they have somebody that they can put in who can change the game upside down. And of course, as the season goes, there are going to be players who are going to be fit. The Rodris hopefully won't be getting more red cards, and Kevin De Bruyne will be back from injuries, and some players who are still out. So there's so much for Man City to improve on, but at this moment, things are not looking good, and that's why they lost the game against Arsenal. It was a boring game, that's for sure. Maybe it was boring more for the City fans who were expecting something because there were too many passes on their team, but nothing going forward. While for us now, they were taking their time looking for this, and I think a Martinelli substitution was the best thing that they could do because they transformed the game. Anyway, it seems like I'm already finishing the analysis. Let's get to hear what they're going to be talking about so that we get into the video.
tactical battle?
No, I do not like it. I thought Jules was better than that. He's been hanging around Gap too long. As a striker, Ali, how much sympathy do you have for Haaland? How much excuses can you make for Haaland, given that he was anonymous?
Right, I'm not going to make excuses for Erling Haaland, first and foremost. But I will say that this is not the first time that we have seen Manchester City not fully utilize the skill set that Erling Haaland provides this team with. Even in games against Arsenal last year, there were moments in which Manchester City found a little bit more variety and then just went straight over the top, just floated balls over the top, and he was manhandling the center backs for Arsenal. At no point did we see that yesterday. At no point did we see Manchester City with vertical passing. At no point did we see Manchester City just put the ball up there, skip lines of pressure, turn around the center backs, and know that these center backs have this monster coming behind them. That there is at least the threat of turning the center backs around. And Nathan will tell you that as a center back, it's far more comfortable when everything is in front of you and when you have no threat of actually being turned around and facing your own goal. And at no point did you feel that threat from Manchester City. Now, how is that on Erling Haaland? I don't think that's quite the case. That's just a philosophy for Manchester City, and they stick to this philosophy in which it's just pass, 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 and they just pass themselves to death, but they never really threaten it. And that's, I guess you can give credit to Arsenal and how well structured they were defensively, but there are moments in which Arsenal was pressing the ball and you could bypass that pressure and go and find Erling Haaland and feed him. You feed the bear. Give it to him. The more you get him involved, the more he gets excited about running in behind. The more he gets excited about fighting with the two center backs. The more he gets excited about, you know what, I'm going to dominate this game physically. And he can do that, but not if you don't play him the ball, not if you don't find spaces in behind, and not if you just float the ball over there. Let him fight. He can do that for you. Allow him to do that, and then guess what happens? The center backs take a couple of steps back, and when they take a couple of steps back, then you have all the space underneath for all your little guys to run around and do whatever it is that they want to do. But if you don't earn that space to play, and if you don't earn the ability to now combine in the final third, then you're not going to create anything. It's what we saw from Manchester City. They could have stayed out there for the next 2 hours after that, and they were never going to create anything. Their best chance was Nathan Ake of a broken play in the first half. So when they're saying that they created chances, I don't know where that came from. Offensively, it was an inept performance from Manchester City and no creativity at all.
So not his fault?
Well, it is his fault in the sense that he could demand, he could make runs in behind, he could potentially make himself available in different areas, he could get on his teammates. I mean, I suppose that's what you can point to Erling Haaland in terms of being that his responsibility. But in the end, he does depend on service. And if he doesn't get on service, he's not Lionel Messi. He's not turning and dribbling a bunch of people. That's not his game.
That's why he's not going to win Ballon d'Or.
Wow. That and among a few other things. But the truth of the matter is that he does depend on service. And if the service is not coming, then honestly, I can tell you, yesterday, Xhaka could have played center forward for Manchester City and it would not have made a difference. Erling Haaland, the way that Manchester City was playing, he was irrelevant.
True statement has never been said in this studio.
Interesting things that are being said here by Ali. He's really talking about how much Man City's tactics were not really helping them in the game, because of course they have this master of a player in Erling Haaland, who we know that if he gets the ball, he will make a living nightmare out of defenders. But these guys, they, try to do more of what they are used to do, which is controlling the ball, passing the ball, controlling the ball, passing the ball, which doesn't really help the team. Which in the end of this game did not really help the team, because look at how the game came out in terms of how it was like. I feel like we talked about this. I remember there was a person who asked this few seasons back that, it was Jimmy Carragher. He talked about how he felt like Erling Haaland had gone to the wrong team. As much as he's this striker who can cause chaos going forward, the team he's playing for don't usually utilize a gunman. That's why they prefer to play a false nine over a center forward who drops back and try to do the passes, which in this game Haaland was trying to do. That's why he had 23 touches in the game, 23 touches of the whole game, of a player who you expect is the superstar of the team. And that's what caused this whole chaos, because that made the work easier for the Arsenal defense. That's why the players like Saliba were able to deal with Haaland the fewer times they got the ball. But if you utilize him passing the balls into the spaces, making him do, Haaland's strength is, that when he gets the ball, when he looks at the shot, he is able to cause nightmares out of any keeper. And when he has to use his weight, his strength, when he's running around, giving the ball, he does that. But in this case, they did not do that. They were missing the players who could create that, we could say that. But when you are not really that good, you don't have a DM, at least try to use somebody who can cause problems. Of course, Rodri's missing was really evident, but replacing that with Bernardo Silva, like I said, it was a little bit asking too much, and that could have been what caused this game. So there is more into this game than what we were hearing here when we listen to the Manchester City supporter and this crew, that he's only talking about it was a deflected ball. What there was more into this game. The tactics of Pep Guardiola were able to be outclassed because, in a way, Mikel Arteta knew that this is how Man City was going to set up like, and he utilized it, and you could see there was a difference, and the difference is that Arsenal won the game at the end of the game. Most of those players did not pass the ball to Haaland, which could have been a difference maker in making this team win the game, but they did not do it, and because they did not do it, guess what? They lost the game, and losing the game means what? We are here talking about them now, thinking that can they go forward, can they do something? Like, you can even hear what we are being told here, that by Ali, he's saying that they could have played until tomorrow, and that could have never even made a difference because they were not playing the game according to Haaland's strength. The gunman you'd expect could be the difference maker, the goal scorer. They were not doing that. At the same time, with the way they were playing, you could have put, Shaka in the game, and there could have not been any difference in terms of them creating something, because the only time that they created something was in the beginning, and it was not even creating, it was just the way they started, that Arsenal was still asleep. But once that team was active, the game became something else, and that was the difference of this game, and that's why they lost the game. Makes sense? Anyway, so let's hear what we are going to be talking about in terms of Haaland, because there's still more to talk about Haaland.
That you're irrelevant?
Yes. I would have been just as irrelevant as Erling Haaland.
How much is he a victim of what he achieved last season, Shaq? Because inevitably comparisons are going to be made. It's 4 games.
No, listen, well, the comparisons, in terms of the comparisons, yes, of course, everybody's expecting, well, debate pre-season was, could he equal last year's tally? And I think for the most part, we said no. But, of course, there's that expectation. But to the point about Erling Haaland and his struggles or the comparisons with last season, you saw him equally frustrated at different points last season when he dropped deep, and then Pep Guardiola told him, no, go play on the shoulders of the centre forwards. And if he does that, and he has a day like he did yesterday with 0.0 expected goals, that for me is on Pep Guardiola. If he's doing what you tell him to, and then you can't get the service to him, then the coach has to bear the brunt of that responsibility. At the same time, Haaland has had his frustrations, well, so far this season with Arsenal. In the Community Shield, similarly. No chances on target, 0.0 expected goals. You put that down to Arsenal and how organised they are defensively. You can put it down to the individuals. Maybe we're having a different discussion about Arsenal's season last year if Saliba stays fit. But Pep Guardiola, his responsibility is to find ways for Erling Haaland to be served. Because we all know that once the ball gets into the box, there is nobody in world football better than him. But if that service is cut off, is denied, and you can't figure it out, to Jules' point about making adjustments to address what the opponent is doing, then that's on the manager. I blame Pep Guardiola just as much as I give Mikel Arteta credit for how silent Erling Haaland.
And I'm not asking Manchester City to change their philosophy as to who they are. Just add to it a little spice, a little flavor, something different, a little variety that gives the center backs and the defenders something different to think about. If everything is happening in front of you, everything becomes a whole lot easier to predict. If there's no threat in behind, you're just sitting here and say, all right, well, you guys go ahead and pass the ball. Eventually, we're going to cut out a pass. Eventually, we're going to get out in transition because we just don't feel that right now you're dynamic enough to break through us. And it's what happened against Arsenal. It was very clear to see. And I'm sure for the center backs, they're like, well, this is a whole lot easier than we thought it was going to be.
Nathan, what do you think?
No, I think it's interesting. I think the stats that have gone up there, again, they make a point which isn't necessarily delivered with full context, because last season, we're scoring their hat-tricks every other week, and realistically, his better play for the team overall in terms of his hold-up play and alike came in the second half of the season where he wasn't scoring to the same sort of rate. So I think there is value in there. And also, he had games last season where he didn't really have that many touches and that much involvement. But again, in the side that keeps lots of the ball, the guy that will have the fewest touches is likely going to be the central striker. And I think maybe they could have used him a bit more. They could have played him in, tested a few channel balls and alike. But I don't think it's in City's nature. And I think you can sort of figure out what type of game you're going to see from them, depending on who the personnel are. Like when he goes to play Leipzig, he likes to have people who put their foot on the ball and not really go for it. But then in other games, he's starting with Doku, and you know he's going to be more direct. And I think ultimately for this game, in my perspective, we'll spend a lot of time talking about Haaland and how he didn't have any shots, didn't score anything like this. But it was a good defensive game from both sides, because from the Arsenal perspective, the guy that had 2 shots on target was the guy who came on at half-time who was playing on the left wing. Like, what about the central strikers for them? I think tactically both teams sort of nullified each other. And unfortunately, when you have games between these sorts of sides, it's like watching a chess game in primetime TV. It doesn't necessarily work out, but I'm pretty sure Haaland and City, they'll find something out, they'll figure it out, and maybe, just maybe, one big aspect of the goals that he scores and his movement that he has is when you have a player like Kevin De Bruyne in there who will maybe want to stretch the game that bit more, test some of those balls in behind. But when you've got Kovacic in there, you've got Bernardo Silva, and you've got Rico Lewis, that's not in the forefront of their mind. So there's more to come from him. I'm almost 100% sure of that.
In terms of Haaland, it always happened. If you have ever noticed it, so many players can come in and have one of the best seasons in the beginning of the season, then the players disappear. We've seen this before. It's not like something that is happening for the first time. The Premier League always have this thing that they learn to work on the players and be able to learn to defend against them. The deal with Mo Salah, remember the first season he came in, was it 2015, 2016? The amount of goals he scored, the threat he was causing as a winger. But I'm not saying that he dropped down, he kept on scoring, but he was not scoring less than he did in the beginning. So we would expect to see something like that happening from a player like Haaland, but it is more, I think things have changed the more because the way the team of Man City has now been set up. Now, like what Ali is saying, that they were playing a gunman, like a false 9, if you understand what I mean. A false 9 is a player like Roberto Firmino who is comfortable playing against the team, facing his own team while passing to the wingers as they run into goal score. That's not a Haaland. Haaland wants the ball that comes to him while he's facing the defense, and he'll cause problems. And that's not something that we saw in this game, and that's not something we have seen so many times this season. That's why when you're looking at the stats that he has scored 8 goals, but last season around this time he had scored around 14 goals, and at the same time we're looking at situations that last season at this time he had only missed 1 game without scoring any goal, but in this season we're already seeing that 5 games have already been played. It means 5 managers have already outclassed Pep Guardiola in how to use this master of this cyborg of a player, this beast of a player we have come to know and come to love. So you can see the difference and how much these are causing problems to what Man City are producing, but that there can be something that they grow up to here. There can be something that they can use and actually say more up to what Man City are able to do. But at this moment, I cannot really say something to say that he will not do something, he will not get something, because Haaland always surprise people. He can always come in and also cause problems. So let's give it time. Let's allow him to go through this, terrible time, and let's see how much he can grow into and come back to the player that we are all used to seeing and actually enjoy to watch. But yes, it was not really a good game for them, and I think they need to improve in terms of how the games goes in, because if they don't, it's going to be an interesting season. Like what Pep Guardiola is saying, no team has done a 4P. There could be the team that does it because they still have the stars that can do it, but it's not looking like at the moment. Let's talk about us now as we end this video.
Jules, from an Arsenal perspective, you've been to many of these games, of course. It's well written that Arsenal have been on the wrong end of the scoreline in so many occasions up against City. What did you feel was different there yesterday?
Well, I think not having Kevin De Bruyne against you or Rodri, because Rodri, remember, scored that winning goal 2 seasons ago at the Emirates right at the end of the game. Of course, that changes something. However, they didn't make a mistake. Maybe they didn't show the naivety that they have showed at times in the past. I think Declan Rice makes a big difference, and we saw how good William Saliba was against Haaland, for example, and his stats show it and prove it. The fact that Saliba can go the whole 90 minutes against Erling Haaland without committing a single foul, never being dribbled, winning all his duels. I think he's got 98% pass completion as well. was very impressive. But when you have Jorginho to some extent, but especially Declan Rice working that hard in front of your back four, which was not the case, obviously, in the past few seasons, that makes a big difference. Again, especially when Rodri is not there on the other side. So the difference is hard to tell. Arsenal have played really well at times against City before in the league, and yet they lost 12 in a row. Arteta, I think, put good plans together in the league last season. For example, the man-man marking, the press that they did, especially at the Emirates, worked well for a certain time. Eventually, Pep used to beat him all the time. It was 8 defeat, 1 draw, and 1 win against Pep Guardiola until yesterday. So sometimes you just change the little things. You've got a new player that makes a big difference. You get a bit lucky, of course, and Arsenal rode their luck yesterday. And that's the difference. But they can go to the Etihad in April or whenever the reverse fixture is, and they could still get battered 3-0. You just don't know. But on the truth of this game on Sunday was that collectively they were very strong. Nobody makes any mistake. It was close at time when Raya got blocked by Alvarez, for example, in the first half. They did play with a little bit of fire at times, but they were so solid collectively. And again, structurally, in the way they pressed that 4-4-2, and then when they had the ball, I thought they were very impressive.
It would be really, really wrong to not talk about the stars of the game, because we are almost focusing more on analyzing what City did rather than what Arsenal did. Because Arsenal, at the end of the day, they won the game. It means something was right on their side. We could take like what we are hearing right now. We can actually understand that maybe it was more of what Arsenal had, the secret weapon that they have, the Declan Rice, the difference maker in this game. We can talk about how they set up in terms of their structure was so strong to not allow any mistakes, which helped them to actually cause havoc rather than to receive that in the return. So there is more that they did which helped this team to win in terms of making sure that the players who were in each position played to their full best and allowing the players that were around them to actually try to produce the best for the players who were there. And that could have been the difference in terms of how they won the game. Of course, the road they like in terms of how the goal came in about, of course, it was still a deflected ball, so we're going to talk about it. But that helped as well in terms of how this helped them getting into the game, winning the game, and actually getting something at the end of the game. But also we can look at how they were able to nullify City's strength, allowing them to pass the ball but not do anything, because last time what we could see from Arsenal and Arteta, they wanted to control the ball as much as Man City, but in this game they were comfortable without the ball, and that helped them, that they only kept their structures to not allow City to break them down, but able to do so. And the difference in this game rather than last season was that it was not only the defensive that had to maintain their structures to keep Man City from closing havoc, it was also the midfielders. The midfielders were making sure that as much as City are trying to break from their defense to come and attack, they don't allow that link up between the midfield of Man City and also the strike force of Man City, which was for me the difference maker in this game. So it was tactically genius of Mikel Arteta to make sure that in the midfield, whenever Man City are trying to use those men in terms of attacks, they put more pressure and force this team to go back than what they were able to do. And that in itself was what gave them the masterclass to actually win this game at the end of the game. And we can see that we build up from that and see what they're able to do as we go forward. But that is somehow the difference maker in terms of how they won the game, and they were able now after that be able to take the ball and set up to their strike force. And I have to say Declan Rice was an important piece to what Mikel Arteta wanted to do in this game, and you could see it worked. It gave them more into going forward, and that's how they got the game. What can you say about this? It was a tactical masterclass from Mikel Arteta, as well as maybe he was schooling his master a bit, and I think he did that so perfectly well. So that's what made this game more different. So my thoughts at the end of this is that Man City don't have more of the creators going forward, which are able to take the ball and dink it forward like what Kevin De Bruyne always does it. Mires used to do it. He's no longer there at the club. So they have more of ball carriers who always want to run with the ball and try to either cut it in or shoot it in. They didn't even put a Jack Grealish who's able to frustrate the side he is, and the more he does it, it forces the defense of Arsenal to come in and try to stop and do more. They didn't have that, but in this case, which made Arsenal's game so easier. So in other words, we can say Pep Guardiola overthinked this game, and Mikel Arteta was able to outclass him in his own game. So that's the end when you look at it in it. But I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. I'll be doing more into this, looking at how Haaland is, because there is another video that it's still in the making. You get to see it when it's done. It's going to be exciting. Anyway, I want to know your thoughts in the comment section. Tell me what have you enjoyed in this season. What are you expecting to see as we go forward? I'm out. Peace. Subscribe to the Connect, like I said.